Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today's story is a wild HOA revenge tale. The kind that starts with a simple act of kindness and ends with an entire homeowners association getting exactly what they deserve. This one's about how a man got fined just for giving out free cold water, and how he turned that petty punishment into the most satisfying comeback his neighborhood had ever seen. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? All right, let's get into it. The Arizona summer had always been brutal, but that year it was merciless. The kind of heat that shimmered on asphalt, made mailboxes too hot to touch, and caused even the most stubborn cacti to droop in defeat. In the suburban neighborhood of Copper Ridge Estates, the lawns were trimmed, the driveways spotless, and the rules endless. Ethan Cole had lived there for 4 years, a middle-class homeowner with a quiet life. He spent most of his days working remotely and tending to his small front yard. But lately, something had been gnawing at him. Every day, as he watched joggers, delivery workers, and even kids walking home from school wilt under the desert sun, he felt a pang of guilt. He remembered the heat exhaustion cases on the news and decided he could do something small, something human. He bought a small cooler, filled it with ice and bottled water, and set it near the sidewalk with a simple handwritten sign, "Free cold water. Stay safe." He didn't expect much, but the smiles, the waves of gratitude, the quiet thank yous, those became his reward. Within days, his cooler became a small neighborhood landmark. People came by not just for water, but to chat briefly, to feel a touch of kindness in a world that often felt rigid. But in Copper Ridge Estates, kindness wasn't listed anywhere in the rulebook. And soon, the rulebook spoke louder than reason. A week later, Ethan opened his mailbox to find a bright yellow slip from the Homeowners Association. Violation notice. Unauthorized structure on common view area. $100 fine. He laughed at first, thinking it was a mistake. But it wasn't. To the HOA board, his cooler was unsightly, a community disruption, a liability. As the sun burned above his porch that afternoon, Ethan felt something shift in him. A small flicker of disbelief, then irritation, then quiet, focused defiance. By the time the second notice arrived, threatening further fines for continued noncompliance, Ethan realized this wasn't just about water. It was about control. And in a community built on rules, control was everything. As the week ended, Ethan stood on his porch, staring at the empty spot where his cooler used to sit. The HOA had won, for now, but inside a plan was forming. Something subtle, creative, and deeply satisfying. The board thought they had silenced him. They didn't realize they had just motivated him. And as another sweltering day rolled in, the seeds of quiet revenge began to take root. Copper Ridge Estates wasn't a bad place to live. At least that's what the brochures said. A community of excellence where pride meets perfection, a safe, family-friendly environment. But behind the manicured hedges and rule-bound smiles was an invisible tension, a silent contest for control and conformity. The HOA board sat at the top of that system. Run mostly by retirees with time and opinions to spare, it operated less like a community and more like a kingdom. The president, Linda Harrow, was known for her meticulous enforcement of rules. Grass height, mailbox color, trash day protocol, nothing escaped her clipboard. When Ethan's free water setup appeared, it wasn't the act of generosity that drew her attention. It was the break in uniformity. One small cooler sitting under a tree became, to her, a breach in visual order. She saw it as a crack in the wall of control, and cracks had to be sealed immediately. The fines continued. One for repeated non-compliance, another for public solicitation, even though no money ever changed hands. Each letter came with the same condescending tone, as though kindness was an act of rebellion. Neighbors began whispering. Some thought Ethan was reckless. Others admired his quiet stand. A few even left bottled water of their own by the sidewalk, but those were swiftly reported and removed. It became clear. The HOA didn't just want the cooler gone. They wanted the idea of it erased. Ethan realized that direct resistance would only bring more fines. Instead, he began studying the HOA itself, its bylaws, its funding, and most importantly, its annual events. Every summer, the HOA hosted a community meeting, followed by a family fun day. Attendance was mandatory for homeowners, but usually dreadful in spirit. The board gave speeches, collected dues, and showcased how well the community was doing. That's when the idea began to form, a quiet, perfect reversal. If the HOA hated his generosity so much, maybe it was time they experienced it firsthand. Not as control, but as spectacle. And as the temperature soared toward triple digits again, Ethan knew the universe had just handed him the perfect weapon, the Arizona sun. The heat that had punished everyone was about to become his ally. The next chapter of the neighborhood story wouldn't be written in fines. It would be written in ice. Ethan spent the next few weeks in quiet preparation. He didn't tell anyone what he was planning. He knew that in Copper Ridge, even whispers traveled fast. Instead, he started researching local food trucks, event rentals, and small business permits. His goal wasn't chaos, it was irony. He wanted the HOA to publicly participate in the very thing they tried to suppress, generosity in plain sight, and the stage would be their own annual meeting. Through a few calls and one clever conversation with a local vendor, Ethan found the perfect partner, a vintage-style ice cream truck that also served shaved ice and popsicles. It was called Chill Wave. The owner, an energetic man named Rico, loved community events and was more than happy to park anywhere permitted. Ethan didn't need HOA permission. He just needed to sponsor it. Technically, homeowners were allowed to support the event by funding local businesses. That clause, hidden deep in the association's event guidelines, became his loophole. He paid the deposit, arranged the schedule, and set one condition. Chillwave would show up right before the HOA speeches began, parked in full view of the community center. Free to everyone. No sales. Just ice, laughter, and cool relief on a scorching day. As the date approached, the HOA board sent out formal notices. Attendance required, annual meeting and family day. Dress appropriately. Refreshments provided. Ethan smiled at the irony of that line. This year, the refreshments were going to be unforgettable. When the morning arrived, the sun was blazing by 10 a.m. The asphalt shimmered and families dragged folding chairs under tiny patches of shade. Board members gathered near the podium, clipboards in hand, fanning themselves with pamphlets. The air was thick with heat and impatience. Then, just as the first speech began, the faint chime of a familiar tune echoed from down the street. It started as a soft melody, then grew louder. Heads turned. Children perked up. The crowd shifted. Down the road, gleaming in chrome and pastel colors, came the Chillwave truck, its loudspeakers playing cheerful music, its side banner announcing, "Compliments of your HOA. Stay cool, stay kind." Linda Harrow's jaw nearly dropped. Ethan, standing quietly among the crowd, just smiled. The HOA hadn't just allowed this. They were hosting it. The plan had worked perfectly. And as the line for free ice stretched longer than the line for the board's booth, the message was clear. Generosity belonged here too. But Ethan's revenge wasn't finished yet. The real storm was only beginning. The HOA meeting that day quickly unraveled. What was meant to be a controlled, orderly event turned into a carnival of laughter and chaos. Children ran with melting popsicles, parents chatted freely, and for the first time in years, neighbors smiled at one another without fear of citation. The board tried to regain control, but their microphones were drowned out by the hum of conversation and the jingle of the ice truck. It was everything they despised. Spontaneous, joyful, unregulated. Photos spread quickly. Some residents posted pictures online with captions like, "Our HOA finally did something cool," and "Free ice on a 108-degree day. Thank you, HOA." Within hours, Copper Ridge Estate's official social media page was flooded with comments. Some were praising the kindness. Others asked when it would happen again. The irony was perfect. The HOA was now being thanked for the very act it had punished. Behind the scenes, Linda was furious. She tried to find a violation in Ethan's sponsorship, but found none. Every clause had been followed, every rule respected. Legally, the truck had been part of the HOA event, their event. The heat, combined with embarrassment, made tempers rise. Board members argued among themselves. some even suggesting that the gesture had improved community morale. But Linda saw it differently. To her, this was humiliation. Ethan, meanwhile, stayed silent. He didn't boast or post online. He didn't need to. His quiet defiance had spoken louder than any speech. By sunset, the ice truck had rolled away, leaving behind sticky footprints, happy faces, and a lingering sense that something had changed. The HOA had been reminded that rules might maintain order, but kindness builds community. Still, in the days that followed, new letters appeared. Unauthorized public event participation. Possible misuse of HOA branding? They were reaching, desperate. But this time Ethan didn't respond with words. He responded with something else entirely. He filed a formal motion with the City Council, nominating the HOA's Community Cooling Initiative for a Local Kindness Award. The paperwork listed the HOA as the sponsor, and just like that, their reputation became tied to his act of generosity, forever. When the award was later announced, the HOA had no choice but to accept it publicly. Cameras rolled, smiles were forced, and standing in the back of the crowd, Ethan simply watched, satisfied. The ice had melted, but the lesson had frozen in place. Over the next few months, Copper Ridge estates began to shift. Rules still existed, but their enforcement softened. Fewer fines, more flexibility. The HOA board even created a community kindness committee, likely to save face, but it became genuinely popular. Residents began small projects, plant swaps, free book stands, shared garden produce. It was as though the ice truck had thawed something deeper than frozen treats. It had thawed the culture itself. Linda eventually stepped down. Officially, she cited personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth. She'd lost the respect of the community she tried to control. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his routine simple. He didn't seek recognition. His cooler returned quietly to the sidewalk, once again filled with water bottles. This time, no one complained. In fact, others joined in. Copper Ridge had become a little warmer in spirit, even as the desert stayed hot. The story of the fines and the ice truck began to spread online. It reached neighboring communities, then local news. Soon it became a small viral sensation, a symbol of peaceful, clever defiance against overreaching authority. Ethan never commented publicly, but neighbors who knew him understood his quiet satisfaction. The HOA had tried to punish him for kindness and ended up branding themselves with it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's cool, calculated, and served ice cold. Years later, new homeowners arrived, unaware of the battle that once froze the heart of Copper Ridge Estates. They simply saw a friendly community, one where small gestures of goodwill were common. The annual HOA meeting still took place every summer, but now there was always an ice truck parked by the entrance. Officially sponsored, fully approved, and eagerly awaited by children and adults alike. The first time Ethan saw it return, he smiled. His act of rebellion had become a tradition. The cooler he once placed under that tree was gone now, faded, cracked, and retired. But its spirit had spread far beyond his yard. What began as a $100 fine had turned into a permanent reminder that decency can outlast bureaucracy, and that even the most rigid systems can melt under the warmth of human kindness. And somewhere, under the blazing Arizona sun, Ethan Cole leaned back in his chair, listening to the faint chime of the ice truck tune drifting through the neighborhood. The sound that once symbolized defiance had become the anthem of community, and that was the sweetest victory of all.